So usually when we talk about a murder mystery, there's this expectation of absolute precision.
Right, yeah, like a math equation.
Exactly. Like you find the weapon, you establish the timeline, the detective points a finger in the drawing room, and the judge bangs the gavel.
Right, it's very binary.
Yeah, guilty or not guilty. And honestly, that's incredibly comforting. I mean, we like our morality to be visible and neatly categorized.
Well, we can just go to sleep feeling safe at night.
Right. But then you step into the world of 19th century Russian literature.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, specifically the mind of Fyodor Dostoevsky. And that neat little equation just completely shatters.
It really does.
We end up looking at this landscape of guilt and morality that is just, well, it's the absolute definition of muddy waters for the human soul.
Muddy, deep, and very dark waters.
Yeah, and no book plunges us deeper into that mud than Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov.
Absolutely.
So, welcome to this deep dive. We know you're here because you want those profound, meaningful insights, but, without the dry academic overload.
Right. We want to keep it grounded.
Exactly. So today we are pulling from 3 really comprehensive literary and psychological frameworks.
And our mission here isn't just to recap some 19th century whodunit.
No, not at all. We're looking at how this one family's profound dysfunction acts as this massive philosophical battleground for the human spirit. We've got about 20 minutes to really focus on the deep philosophical analysis of this text. Okay, let's unpack this.
It really is a masterclass. And it operates on a scale that is almost intimidating, honestly.
Well, intimidating is a good word for it.
Yeah, because Dostoevsky didn't just want to write a family drama. He recognized that the shifting cultural tides of his era were literally tearing the human psyche apart.
Right.
So he constructs this philosophical model, but he disguises it as a family.
Like a microcosm of humanity itself.
Exactly. The Karamazovs are the chessboard. They were the most profound existential questions. Questions about faith, logic, passion, cruelty. They all get played out in flesh and blood.
Flesh and blood. I like that.
To understand the philosophy, you have to understand the terrain he built first.
Right. The chessboard itself. And the king on this board, or maybe the jester actually, is the patriarch, Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov.
Oh, Fyodor.
Yeah. If we're looking at this family as a map of human nature, the father is the absolute darkest, most primal corner of that map.
The basement, basically.
The basement, yeah. He is the embodiment of base hedonism, corruption, and just this almost aggressive lack of moral boundaries.
Hard to overstate how awful he is.
He really is. He's a man who has hoarded wealth through incredibly shady dealings. He married twice entirely for money and lust, and he completely abandoned his children.
Just left them to be raised by servants and relatives.
Right, but what's fascinating is how he operates day to day. He's described as a buffoon.
A clown.
Yeah, he makes a clown of himself in public, mocking everything sacred. And he doesn't do this because he's some, deep, misunderstood thinker.
No, not at all.
He uses the cynicism and the buffoonery as a shield, right? So he can just keep indulging his appetites without anyone expecting better of him.
That buffoonery is actually a very specific psychological defense mechanism.
How so?
Well, by constantly playing the fool, Fyodor makes it impossible for anyone to hold him to any sort of moral standard.
Oh, I see. If he's a joke, you can't judge him seriously.
Exactly. He represents the absolute lowest denominator of human existence. Just pure, unchecked appetite.
He's all physical?
Completely. He lives entirely in the physical world, totally devoid of any spiritual or moral compass. He's a black hole of narcissism.
Right.
And from this chaotic, corrupt source spring 3 legitimate sons. And they represent 3 entirely distinct, almost mutually exclusive paths of human existence.
You really see this branching out perfectly in the book.
You do.
We have the eldest, Dmitri, the son from the first marriage, and Dmitri's just pure instinct. Yeah, he is violent passion and emotional chaos. He's a former soldier, he squanders his money, drinks heavily, and he lives in this constant whirlwind of romantic obsession.
But he's not his father.
No, he isn't, and that's what makes him so compelling. He has this agonizing sense of honor.
Right.
I mean, he hates his father, partly over a bitter inheritance dispute, but also because they are both obsessively pursuing the exact same woman.
Grushenka.
Yeah, Grushenka, which is just disgusting. But Dmitri is constantly tormented by his own baseness.
He hates that he's like his dad.
Exactly. He has these soaring ideals. He'll literally recite romantic poetry while he's drunk, and he desperately wants to be good and noble, but he just cannot control the fire of his own impulses.
Dmitri is really the beating heart of the story.
He really is.
He is the raw, physical, emotional human being, suspended in agony between the divine and the demonic.
He feels everything at maximum volume.
That's a great way to put it. Now, if Dmitri's the body, then the second son, Ivan, is the mind. Yeah. Ivan represents cold rationality, skepticism, and this agonizing philosophical doubt.
He's the intellectual.
Right. He is a brilliant writer and a self-educated intellectual. Where Dmitri feels his way through the world, Ivan tries to calculate it.
He wants everything to make sense.
He looks at the universe, sees the profound suffering that's just baked into its design, and tries to process it all through the lens of pure logic. He is the mind entirely detached from the heart.
Which brings us to the youngest, Alyosha.
Total opposite.
Yeah. If Dmitri is the body and Ivan is the mind, Alyosha is the pure spirit. He's a novice monk in the local monastery, a disciple of the highly revered elder, Father Zosima.
Zosima is a huge figure here.
Huge. And Alyosha is characterized by this almost naive purity. He has this active, non-judgmental love for everyone and an unwavering religious faith.
And what's brilliant is the gravity he has.
What do you mean?
Well, everyone, even his deeply flawed father, even the chaotic Dmitri, even the hyper-rational Ivan, they are all drawn to Alyosha.
Oh, right. They all confess to him.
Exactly. They spill their darkest secrets to him because he offers absolutely no judgment, just deep, abiding compassion.
But, you know, the architecture of this family isn't complete without the fourth brother.
Yes, the shadow.
A shadow, Smerdyakov.
Smerdyakov is such a haunting figure.
He really is. For those listening, Smerdyakov is the illegitimate son. He's widely believed to be Fyodor's child from an assault on a vulnerable, mentally ill woman who wandered the town.
They called her Stinkin' Lizaveta.
Right. And Smerdyakov is raised right there in the Karamazov household, but not as a son.
Never as a son.
He is raised as a servant, a cook. He is literally the neglected, festering consequence of Fyodor's unrestrained immorality, just walking around the house every single day.
Serving the legitimate sons their dinner.
Yeah.
Smerdyakov is the unseen consequence of societal and familial neglect.
He's ignored by everyone.
He is. And he's highly intelligent, but his intelligence has nowhere to go, so it ferments.
Like it rots inside him.
Exactly. It ferments into this toxic, twisted resentment. He quietly observes everything. He listens to the high-minded philosophies floating around the dining room.
Especially Ivan's philosophy.
Especially Ivan's. And he processes them with a chilling, literal coldness. Smerdyakov is what happens when brilliance is entirely divorced from love and opportunity.
You know, looking at this family, it's almost impossible not to see a perfect pre-Freudian map of the human psyche.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got Fyodor and Dmitri acting as the raw, unfiltered id, entirely driven by desire and impulse.
Right.
You've got Ivan as the overthinking, rationalizing ego, desperately trying to impose logic on reality. And Alyosha is this idealized superego, the moral compass.
That's a very solid reading of it.
But I have to push back on Dostoevsky's setup here for a second.
Okay, lay it on me.
If he's constructing a philosophical model, is he just saying we are all a messy, unavoidable mix of these elements, or is he setting up a rigged game?
A rigged game.
Yeah, because reading through the way Ivan's arc develops, it feels like Dostoevsky is stacking the deck. It feels like he's saying pure intellect is doomed to fail from the start, like a warning against being too smart for your own good.
That tension, that exact idea of a rigged game, gets right to the heart of the 19th century Russian cultural crisis.
Really? How so?
Well, Dostoevsky wasn't writing in a vacuum. He was deeply embedded in a society that was fracturing.
Okay.
On one side, you had the traditional spiritual Orthodox Russian identity. That's what Alyosha and the monastery embody.
Right, the old ways.
On the other side, you had a massive influx of Western Enlightenment ideas flooding into Russia.
Like what?
Rationalism, socialism, secularism, atheism, utilitarianism.
Oh, so the ideological wave that Ivan rides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Dostoevsky himself had lived through a radical socialist youth. He was actually subjected to a mock execution for his political activity.
Wait, a mock execution? That's insane.
Yeah, they lined him up in front of a firing squad and pardoned him at the very last second. It profoundly shattered and reshaped his worldview. He came out of that experience deeply fearful of this imported Western rationalism.
That makes sense.
He believed that the human intellect, when it arrogantly divorces itself from spirituality and humility, inevitably leads to destruction.
So is the game rigged against Ivan?
Dostoevsky would argue it's not rigged at all. It's simply the tragic, inevitable reality of our condition. When you rely solely on the human mind to solve the problems of the human soul, you inevitably build a cage of your own logic.
and you starve to death inside it.
Exactly.
And that perfectly sets the stage for where this gets really intense. We have to follow Ivan, our intellectual, right into that cage.
We're moving from the physical squabbles over inheritances into the real ideological heart of this deep dive.
Yes. We are stepping into Ivan's rebellion.
And Ivan's rebellion is so powerful precisely because he doesn't take the easy, cliched atheist route.
That's what I love about this section. Ivan doesn't sit there and just deny that God exists.
Not at all.
He actually tells Alyosha that he is perfectly willing to accept the premise of a creator.
Right.
He accepts that there might be a God, and he even accepts that at the end of time, there might be some grand divine harmony where all the suffering of the universe magically makes sense.
Oh.
But what Ivan does is much more terrifying than denying God. He accepts God's existence, but he categorically rejects God's world.
He declines the contract.
Yes. He looks at the terms and conditions of creation and he says, no thanks.
Because of the suffering. And not just general abstract suffering. Ivan zeroes in on the suffering of innocent children.
Which is the hardest thing to justify.
Exactly. Ivan is a strict empiricist. He refuses to look at the universe from a mystical, spiritual perspective. He looks at the raw data of reality.
And the data is brutal.
The data shows him a world built on a foundation of agonizing pain. His argument is that even if there is an ultimate divine plan, even if universal harmony is achieved eventually,
the price of admission is fundamentally unacceptable.
Exactly.
He actually corners Alyosha with a very specific, devastating example. And this is a tough one to hear, honestly, but we have to look at it to understand Ivan's intellect.
It's essential to his argument.
So Ivan recounts a true story from the contemporary newspapers. There is a young surf boy, maybe 8 years old. And while he's playing, he accidentally throws a stone and injures the paw of one of the wealthy general's favorite hunting dogs.
Just a child playing.
Right. But the general gets absolutely furious. He locks the child in a shed overnight, and the next morning, he strips the boy naked in the freezing cold, forces him to run, and sets his entire pack of vicious hunting hounds on the child.
Tearing him to pieces right in front of the boy's own mother.
It is an unbearable image.
It's meant to be unbearable. Because Ivan forces his pious brother to confront it directly.
Yeah.
Ivan asks Alyosha if the eternal harmony of the universe actually requires the unavenged tear of that single innocent, tortured child.
Then I respectfully return my ticket to the universe.
Exactly. I don't want your harmony. It is not worth the price.
He's effectively putting God on trial. He's acting as the prosecuting attorney for humanity.
And Alyosha, the devout monk, has no logical answer to this.
No, he just whispers that it's an unfair argument. But Ivan doesn't stop there. He takes this empirical outrage and he builds it into what is arguably the greatest piece of literature within a piece of literature. His prose poem, The Grand Inquisitor.
Oh, The Grand Inquisitor. It is Ivan's absolute masterpiece.
It really is.
It is where Dostoevsky brilliantly uses a story within a story to predict the exact psychological mechanics of modern totalitarianism, decades before it swept across Europe.
Let's set the scene for this poem for you listening. Ivan imagines that it's the 16th century, the absolute height of the Spanish Inquisition.
The fires are burning daily.
Heretics are being burned at the stake in the name of the church. And suddenly, quietly, Christ returns to earth.
Right into the middle of it.
He walks the cobblestone streets of Seville. He doesn't announce who he is, but the people instinctively recognize him. The air is charged with this divine presence. He heals a blind man. He raises a little girl from the dead.
And the crowds are weeping and worshiping him.
And then the Grand Inquisitor appears.
The antagonist.
He's this towering, ascetic, 90-year-old cardinal. He sees Christ performing these miracles. He sees the crowd fawning over him. And what does the Inquisitor do?
He doesn't fall to his knees, that's for sure.
No. He gestures to his guards and he orders Christ to be arrested.
And the crowd is so deeply conditioned to obey authority, so terrified of the Inquisition's power, that they literally part like the Red Sea.
They just bow their heads and let the guards drag their savior away.
It's a shocking image.
And that night, the Inquisitor visits Christ in a dark stone dungeon cell and delivers one of the most staggering philosophical indictments ever written.
The Inquisitor walks in and immediately says, "You have no right to add anything to what you said of old. Why have you come to hinder us?"
He's angry that Christ is back.
Very. The Inquisitor then lays out a complete deconstruction of Christ's original message. He goes all the way back to the biblical story of Christ being tempted in the desert by the devil.
Right, the 3 temptations.
Yes, The Inquisitor argues that during those temptations, the devil actually offered Christ the three things humanity desperately needs to be happy: miracle, mystery, and authority.
Break those down for us.
Well, the devil told Christ to turn stones into bread. That's miracle. He told him to throw himself from the temple so angels would catch him. That's mystery. And to take the sword of a global emperor. That's authority.
But Christ refused all three.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why? Because he wanted humanity to choose him freely. He didn't want to buy their faith with a full stomach or awe them into submission with magic tricks or force them to bow through political power.
He gave humanity the ultimate crushing burden, absolute freedom of choice.
And this, the Inquisitor argues with absolute icy conviction, was Christ's greatest crime against humanity.
Wait, freedom is a crime?
According to the Inquisitor, yes. He says that humanity is too weak, too base, and too terrified to handle the burden of freedom.
I mean, choice is stressful.
Right. The psychological agony of having to choose between right and wrong every single day, the spiritual anxiety of free will, it's just unbearable for the average person.
So the Inquisitor basically says, you demanded too much of them.
You didn't love them enough to realize they're just weak, rebellious children.
Wow.
So the Inquisitor proudly declares, "We have corrected your work."
Meaning the church.
Yes, the church has stepped in,
Yeah.
taken away the unbearable freedom, and replaced it with what the people actually crave. They have given the people bread to fill their bellies.
They gave them rigid rules so they never have to make a moral decision again.
And they gave them someone to bow down to. And in exchange for surrendering their agonizing freedom, the people are finally happy.
They are safe from the terror of their own agency.
Exactly.
You know, think about the parallels to our modern digital lives for a second.
Oh, they're everywhere.
It's almost unsettling for you to think about. How often do we eagerly surrender our own choices, our own privacy, and our own critical thinking just for an algorithm to make things easier?
All the time.
We don't want the anxiety of choosing what to watch, what to read, what to buy, or even what political ideology to believe. We want the feed to curate it for us.
We trade the heavy burden of critical thought for the endless bread of convenience.
Yes. The Inquisitor is basically the ultimate primordial algorithm, saying, don't worry, the world is too complex for you, I'll make the hard choices, just obey the terms of service and I'll keep you safe, entertained, and fed.
What's fascinating here is how chillingly accurate that diagnosis of human nature is. We desire to escape ourselves.
We really do.
And the tragedy of the Inquisitor is that he genuinely believes he is the one who truly loves humanity.
Because he's taking on the burden of leadership.
Yes, he's taking on the terrible, lonely burden of ruling them, of lying to them, of maintaining this grand deception, specifically to spare them the psychological pain of freedom.
He looks at Christ and essentially pities him for being an idealist.
An idealist who misunderstood the creature he created.
Okay, so the Inquisitor just delivers this airtight, crushing, historically prophetic argument against free will. He corners God himself with logic. I'm expecting Christ to deliver some grand theological rebuttal. How does he actually counter that? What's the argument that defeats the Inquisitor?
There isn't one.
Wait, what?
And that is the brilliance of the scene. Christ does not argue back. He doesn't offer a single word of logical counter-argument to the Inquisitor's devastatingly rational thesis.
So what does he do?
He listens in total silence. Then he approaches the old, bitter, exhausted cardinal and kisses him softly on his bloodless lips.
A silent kiss? That is his only answer to this massive intellectual assault.
Yes. The Inquisitor shudders, opens the cell door, and tells Christ to go and never ever return.
And Christ walks out into the dark alleys of the city.
The silence is the point. Dostoevsky is illustrating that divine love, active, forgiving, incomprehensible love, cannot be debated with logic.
It operates on a completely different frequency.
Exactly. If Christ had argued back, he would have been stepping onto the Inquisitor's playing field, the field of rationalism, where everything is reduced to utilitarian calculations.
The kiss breaks the rules of logic.
It is an act of pure, irrational grace. But here is the tragedy. For Ivan, who is telling this story, the intellect still rules.
Right.
He has constructed this airtight, pessimistic argument against the world. And he cannot kiss the world. He can only judge it.
Which means we have to look at what happens when that judgment leaves the realm of poetry and enters reality.
Things are about to get very real.
Yeah, we've spent all this time discussing incredibly dense, abstract philosophy. We've talked about returning tickets to the universe and trading freedom for bread in 16th century Spain. But what happens when these high-minded theoretical ideas crash into the real physical world?
It gets bloody. Fast.
What happens when philosophy leaves the university lecture hall and enters the living room of a highly dysfunctional family?
This is the pivot point of the entire narrative, where Dostoevsky shows us the terrifying real-world consequences of abstract thought. Ideas do not stay trapped in our heads.
They leak out.
They leak out and they infect the people around us.
And the infection all stems from a single, highly provocative phrase that Ivan casually introduces into the household's dinner table conversations.
If God does not exist, everything is permitted.
Everything is permitted.
It is the ultimate, inescapable, logical conclusion of Ivan's atheistic rationalism.
So let's break that down.
Sure. If there is no divine lawgiver, if there is no ultimate moral arbiter, if there is no afterlife where the scales of justice are finally balanced, then morality is nothing more than a human construct.
It's just a temporary social convention.
Agreed upon for convenience. And if it's just a convention, then logically there is no absolute fundamental reason not to break it.
Provided you are clever enough to get away with it, right?
And strong enough to endure the societal consequences. Now, for Ivan, sitting comfortably in his intellect, this is just a fascinating theoretical exercise.
He is playing chess with ethics.
He is exploring the outermost boundaries of human thought.
But Ivan forgets who is quietly refilling the wine glasses.
Smerdyakov.
The illegitimate, resentful servant. Smerdyakov doesn't have a university education. He doesn't understand the nuanced theoretical acrobatics of philosophy.
He's very literal.
He takes Ivan's abstract words as a literal instruction manual for life. He hears his brilliant, wealthy, educated brother confidently declare, "Everything is permitted," and Smerdyakov thinks, "Excellent, that solves my immediate problem."
Exactly. Smerdyakov is cold, calculating, and deeply humiliated by his station in life. He knows about the 3,000 rubles that Fyodor is keeping in a sealed envelope.
The money Fyodor is using to tempt Grushenka.
Yes. He also knows that Dmitri is frantic, deeply in debt, and making very public, very loud threats to kill their father over that exact sum of money.
So Dmitri is the perfect scapegoat.
Armed with Ivan's philosophical permission slip, Smerdyakov orchestrates the perfect, cynical crime.
Tell us how he does it.
He fakes a severe epileptic fit to establish an airtight medical alibi. Then, when the house is quiet, he sneaks into Fyodor's room, brutally bludgeons the old man to death with a heavy brass paperweight, steals the 3,000 rubles, and then quietly goes back to bed.
Leaving the scene perfectly staged.
Exactly.
And the trap Smerdyakov sets is flawless because every single piece of circumstantial evidence points directly, blindingly at Dmitri.
Oh, it looks terrible for Dmitri.
Dmitri had the clear motive. He was seen running from the father's window covered in blood because in his frantic state he had struck another servant who tried to stop him.
And worst of all, Dmitri is suddenly seen throwing around thousands of rubles the very next day, throwing a wild party.
The jaws of the trap snapped shut entirely on the passionate, chaotic brother. Smerdyakov commits the crime, but Dmitri looks like the perfect monster.
But Dostoevsky isn't primarily interested in the legal mechanics of the trial.
No, the real trial is philosophical.
The true climax of this arc is the confrontation between Ivan and Smerdyakov. Ivan starts putting the pieces together. His mind is too sharp not to.
He suspects the servant.
He does, but he's desperately trying to maintain his own sense of absolute innocence. And in that room, Smerdyakov completely dismantles Ivan's worldview. Smerdyakov confesses to the murder. He explains exactly how he did it.
And then the fatal blow.
He looks Ivan in the eye and tells him, "I was merely the instrument. I was just the physical weapon. You are the true murderer."
It's a staggering moment. Smerdyakov physically hands the stolen 3,000 rubles over to Ivan. He basically says, "This is yours. You gave me the permission to take it. You taught me the philosophy that made this possible.
You are the master, the architect.
Yeah.
I am just your servant carrying out your intellectual will."
And that realization completely destroys Ivan. In that instant, Ivan realizes that his abstract ideas have a very real, very bloody body count.
He sees that the intellect, when severed from empathy, is nothing short of a weapon of mass destruction.
He cannot hide behind his theories anymore. Smerdyakov forces him to look at the corpse his philosophy created.
It's brutal.
I have to pause here because this raises a massive debate, and it's something I struggle with.
Go ahead.
Is Ivan actually truly responsible? Is a philosopher, a writer, a thinker really responsible if a disturbed, resentful person misinterprets or weaponizes their ideas?
It's a heavy question.
I mean, where does intellectual responsibility end and personal criminal action begin? We see this dynamic constantly today. Someone posts a radical political manifesto online or a cynical cultural critique, and some unstable lone wolf takes it entirely literally and commits an act of violence. Is the author of the manifesto morally guilty of that murder? Is Ivan guilty of his father's death just because he said everything is permitted at dinner?
That is the exact tension Dostoevsky is forcing us to confront. And his answer is an unequivocal, terrifying yes, at least in the moral realm.
Really, yes.
Dostoevsky is delving deep into the concept of complicity. He is warning us that ideas are never innocent. They do not exist in a vacuum.
Okay, I see.
When you release a cynical, destructive philosophy into the world, especially a philosophy that explicitly strips away the inherent sacredness of human life and reduces morality to a joke, you bear a profound responsibility for the fruit that seed bears when it lands in fertile, resentful soil.
Ivan physically did not swing the brass paperweight.
But Ivan meticulously constructed the moral universe where swinging that paperweight was perfectly justified. He gave Smerdyakov the psychological key to unlock his own darkest impulses.
This is the agonizing, vast canyon between literal, legal guilt and deep, moral guilt.
Exactly. And we see this dichotomy play out perfectly in the contrasting face of the two brothers, Dmitri and Ivan.
Right, let's talk about Dmitri, the wild, passionate one. He is legally condemned to 20 years of hard labor in the freezing mines of Siberia.
For a murder he absolutely, physically did not commit.
But what happens, Dmitri ends up accepting the punishment. He doesn't go quietly, he fights it in court, but spiritually, he accepts it.
Why does he accept it?
Because he realizes he wanted to do it. He hated his father. He was entirely capable of the murder in his heart. He walked to that window with a weapon.
He accepts the suffering of Siberia as a way to purify his soul.
Yeah, of his past chaotic, base life. He finds a strange, paradoxical sort of freedom in accepting the moral responsibility for his own inner darkness.
He accepts his complicity in the overall sin of the family. He recognizes that his hatred contributed to the atmosphere that killed his father.
But contrast that with Ivan.
Ivan is legally completely innocent. The law cannot touch him.
But Ivan is entirely destroyed by his moral guilt. His Euclidean mind cannot handle the paradox.
The pristine, rational structure he built his life upon completely collapses under the crushing weight of actual bleeding reality.
His logic told him everything was permitted, but his conscience is screaming that he is a murderer.
And this massive cognitive dissonance violently fractures his mind, leading to his descent into madness.
And that descent produces one of the most incredible, surreal moments in literature. The hallucination scene.
Oh, the devil.
Yes. Ivan is alone in his room, feverish, descending into a full nervous breakdown, and he receives a visitor. He is visited by a hallucination of the devil.
But true to form, Dostoevsky doesn't give us some terrifying, majestic monster with pitchforks and horns.
No. Dostoevsky's devil is far more insidious and far more pathetic. He appears to Ivan as a shabby, middle-aged gentleman.
Wearing outdated clothes.
Right, fashion from a few years ago. He acts like a refined member of the upper class, but he's clearly struggling financially.
He's the kind of guy who drops by uninvited for dinner.
A bit of a parasite. A moocher who lives off the generosity of wealthy relatives.
It's such a bizarre, specific choice.
Why a moocher in a bad suit? Why does Dostoevsky choose this incredibly mundane image for the ultimate embodiment of evil?
Because the devil isn't an external, cosmic, majestic force of evil in this context. He is the direct embodiment of Ivan's own cynical inner doubt.
Oh, wow.
He is the personification of the banal, trivial, mocking voice inside Ivan's head. The devil sits on Ivan's sofa and literally quotes Ivan's own brilliant philosophies back to him.
But he does it with a sneer.
He twists them. He mocks Ivan's intellectual pride. He points out that Ivan's grand, majestic ideas of being a Nietzschean man-god, who is heroically moved beyond good and evil, have resulted in nothing more than a sordid, petty, ugly little murder for cash.
Smerdyakov killed for 3,000 rubles, not for a grand philosophy.
Exactly. The devil reflects Ivan's ultimate, most terrifying fear, that his brilliant intellect isn't majestic or heroic at all. It is ultimately hollow, cheap, banal, and entirely meaningless.
The banality of the devil is what breaks Ivan.
Absolutely.
So if Ivan's hyper-rationality collapses into madness and hallucinating shabby gentlemen, and Dmitri's unchecked physical passion ends in a Siberian prison, Dostoevsky is painting a pretty bleak picture.
Very bleak.
It seems like both the mind and the body have completely failed. Does Dostoevsky offer an actual livable alternative to this chaos? What is the antidote? Because right now, the diagnosis is terminal.
Dostoevsky does offer an antidote. But he refuses to offer it in the form of a logical debate.
Because Ivan would win a debate.
Exactly. Logic can always build a cage. Instead, Dostoevsky offers a lived example. This is the philosophy of Father Zosima, and the path that Alyosha must walk.
Let's look deeply at Zosima's teachings. If Ivan's core destructive philosophy is everything is permitted, Zosima's foundational teaching is the exact polar opposite.
Yes. Zosima preaches everyone is really responsible to all men, and for everything.
It is a radical, almost terrifying concept of interconnectedness.
Zosima isn't talking about a vague, warm feeling of goodwill toward humanity. He's teaching a literal spiritual physics.
Spiritual physics.
He believes that because we are all bound together in the human family, a single web of existence, my secret sins contribute to the overarching sin and suffering of the world.
And conversely, my acts of love contribute to the salvation of the world.
Therefore, I cannot sit back and judge the criminal. I am literally responsible for the sins of the criminal, the neglect of the poor, the despair of the lonely, because my own lack of perfect love helped create the world where they stumbled.
I cannot wash my hands of anyone.
Which directly counters Ivan's entire worldview. Ivan desperately tried to distance himself from Smerdyakov to wash his hands of the servant's crime.
But what I find really fascinating about Zosima is how ruthlessly practical he is about what it takes to live this out.
Oh, he's very practical.
He defines love in a way that strips away all the romance. He contrasts true love sharply with what he calls love in dreams.
Yes, and this is where Dostoevsky's psychological genius really shines. Zosima warns that love in dreams is greedy for immediate action, rapidly performed, and in the sight of everyone.
People love the idea of being a savior.
They will even give up their lives, throw themselves in front of a train for humanity if it can be done quickly, like on a brightly lit stage with everyone watching, weeping, and applauding their heroism.
It's an ego trip disguised as compassion.
Exactly. But active love, the actual daily practice of true love, is labor and fortitude. Zosima says it is a harsh and dreadful reality compared to love in dreams.
It's the daily grind. Active love is waking up every single day and choosing to be compassionate to the annoying person, the ungrateful person, the person who smells bad, the person who actively insults you.
It's doing the grueling, invisible, utterly unglamorous work of caring for others without ever expecting a medal.
Without expecting gratitude.
And without expecting a profound philosophical revelation in return. It's rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands permanently dirty in the endless, mundane messiness of human existence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is how Dostoevsky resolves the philosophical tension of the entire novel. He doesn't have Alyosha sit down with a whiteboard and defeat Ivan's Grand Inquisitor argument.
He shows that the answer to existential suffering isn't found in a textbook or a better argument. It's found in compassionate, relentless action.
You simply cannot think your way out of existential despair.
The intellect will always find a reason to despair. You have to love your way out of it, one unglamorous action at a time.
But Dostoevsky is brilliant because he refuses to let faith off the hook easily either.
He definitely doesn't.
He doesn't just torture Ivan, he tests Alyosha just as severely. He forces Alyosha's faith to walk through the fire.
And this brings us to the pivotal, visceral detail of Zosima's death.
Right. Zosima is this revered, saintly, holy figure. When he finally dies, the entire town, all the monks in the monastery, and especially Alyosha, expect a miracle.
Specifically, in the Orthodox tradition, they expect his body to remain incorruptible.
They expect it not to decay, as a clear divine sign from God affirming Zosima's absolute holiness.
They are waiting for the universe to validate their faith.
But what happens? The laws of nature do not suspend themselves. The body begins to rot.
And it begins to smell very quickly and very noticeably.
And the stench becomes a massive scandal. The jealous, rigid monks in the monastery who hated Zosima's joyful teachings used the smell as proof that Zosima was actually a secret sinner.
A fraud rejected by God.
The townspeople who came for a miracle leave deeply disillusioned. And Alyosha's world collapses. His faith is profoundly, violently shaken.
He was looking for that miracle.
That tangible, undeniable proof from God that goodness is rewarded. And instead, God gives him the humiliating stench of biological decay.
Brutal.
I'd be lying if I said that wouldn't shatter my faith too. It's such a brutal, visceral humiliation of a beloved character. You expect a miracle, you expect justice, and you get rot. How does Alyosha process this? How does he not just become an atheist, another Ivan, in that exact moment? Why does Dostoevsky do this to him?
Dostoevsky does this to destroy Alyosha's magical thinking. Remember the Grand Inquisitor?
Yeah, the cardinal.
The Inquisitor explicitly argued that we humans need miracles to believe. They need magic tricks to sustain their faith.
I see.
Dostoevsky is deliberately stripping all of that away from Alyosha. He is forcing a crisis to show that true faith, true active love cannot be built on supernatural guarantees or a suspension of the harsh laws of nature.
It must endure despite the ugly, decaying, brutal realities of life.
Alyosha runs away from the monastery in despair. He actually goes to Grushenka, the woman his father and brother are fighting over, almost ready to give in to corruption.
But instead of corrupting him,
Grushenka shows him unexpected kindness. She gives him an onion, a small act of grace. And Alyosha realizes that he doesn't need Zosima to be a perfect, incorruptible superhero.
he realizes that humanity is broken, decaying, and deeply flawed, and that is exactly why it needs to be loved.
His faith matures in that moment. It transitions from a childlike reliance on magic to an adult, resilient acceptance of reality, combined with a relentless, stubborn commitment to love anyway.
And we see the culmination of this incredibly matured faith in the final scene of the book.
It's a beautiful scene.
It's not some grand theological summit. It's not a triumphant court victory. It's a funeral. It's the funeral for a young boy, Ilyusha, a boy who suffered greatly, whose family was poor, humiliated, and broken.
Alyosha is standing by a large stone, surrounded by a group of the dead boy's young friends.
And Alyosha doesn't preach to these kids about complex dogma. He doesn't try to explain the problem of evil or justify the boy's suffering like a theologian.
No, he asks them for something incredibly simple, yet profoundly difficult.
He asks them to simply hold on to a memory. He asks them to remember this moment right now at the stone when they all loved this poor boy and loved each other.
He tells them that if they carry just one good, kind, sacred memory of compassion in their hearts, it might be the very thing that saves them from a great evil decades later in life.
When they are tempted to become cynical, when they are tempted to become an Ivan or a Smerdyakov, that one memory of shared, active love might be the anchor that stops them.
It is the humblest, quietest victory imaginable.
It is the ultimate rejection of the grand, sweeping ideologies that Ivan obsessed over.
Ideologies that demand blood, perfection, and systemic overhauls of society.
It's a return of the smallest, most fundamental unit of human connection, a shared moment of empathy.
Dostoevsky is saying that the world isn't saved by brilliant manifestos, political revolutions, or airtight rational systems. It is saved piece by piece, soul by soul, by these small, stubborn, unglamorous acts of memory and love.
So what does this all mean? We've been on an intense journey through the snowy, muddy streets of 19th century Russia today.
We certainly have.
We've looked at the terrifying bargain of the Grand Inquisitor, how eagerly trading our freedom and the anxiety of choice for the comfort of security destroys the very essence of our humanity.
We've seen how abstract intellectual ideas like everything is permitted have real-world bloody consequences when they are severed from a conscience.
And we've seen that the only actual livable salvation Dostoevsky offers isn't a silver bullet or a miracle. It's the difficult, daily, smelly grind of radical shared responsibility. True freedom isn't the absence of rules or the ability to do whatever we want. True freedom is the heavy, sacred responsibility we actively choose to take for the people around us.
And as we close, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, lingering concept to ponder, drawn directly from the darkest corner of this story. Think about Smerdyakov.
The shadow.
He represents the neglected, ignored shadows of society. He's the person who is invisible, who's treated as less than human, a mere utility, but who sits quietly in the corner, listening to the philosophies of the elite. Smerdyakov absorbed the cynicism, the grand theories, and the careless, nihilistic rhetoric tossed around by those in power, and he took it literally. Look around our modern world today. What neglected shadows are currently absorbing our most cynical, throwaway philosophies? What are they hearing when we casually post that nothing matters, that truth is entirely relative, that empathy is just a weakness for the gullible?
That's a terrifying question.
The truly terrifying question Dostoevsky asks us is not whether those ideas are philosophically interesting. The question is, what will happen when the people in the shadows finally decide to act on them?
The landscape of the soul is muddy, and the equations are broken. But the responsibility is entirely ours. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.